I was assigned to pick up Admiral Hayes at the civilian arrivals terminal. I stood in my formal dress uniform, bracing for standard military protocol while waiting to escort one of the most decorated commanders in naval history. When he approached and reached out to shake my hand, his cuff shifted back slightly. Right above his left wrist was an ink design I knew better than my own face, a weathered vintage compass, its needle locked directly onto the Big Dipper. My mother carried that exact same tattoo. Identical placement, identical line work, identical faded blue ink. Without thinking, I broke military bearing, looked him in the eye, and whispered, "Sir, my mother has a tattoo just like yours." The Admiral froze instantly. His hand trembled as his eyes welled with tears. Then I spoke her name. Evelyn Sullivan. His face drained of color, turning ghost white. My name is Wren Sullivan, and as an active-duty Navy servicewoman, discipline is the foundation of everything I do. When orders came down assigning me to VIP transport duty for Admiral Hayes at the civilian arrivals terminal, I ensured my dress uniform was immaculate. Escorting one of the highest-ranking flag officers in the fleet was not a task where you made mistakes. I stood at attention near the gate as the tall, silver-haired commander strode into view, his medals catching the terminal lights. When he stopped before me and extended a hand, the stiff fabric of his sleeve shifted back just an inch. That was when the world stopped. Right above his left wrist sat a distinct faded tattoo, a vintage mariner's compass, its needle locked precisely onto the Big Dipper. It was the exact same mark my mother, Evelyn Sullivan, had carried on her skin for as long as I could remember. Before military training could stop me, the words escaped my lips. "Sir, my mother has that exact same tattoo. Her name is Evelyn Sullivan." Admiral Hayes froze instantly. The color drained from his weathered face, leaving him ghost pale in the middle of the crowded corridor. His eyes welled with sudden, overwhelming emotion, his breath hitching audibly. Panic hit me. I had completely breached protocol by speaking out of turn to a 4-star admiral. Yet seeing this formidable stoic leader visibly trembling before me told me that my mother's quiet past held a secret deeper than I had ever imagined. The heavy silence inside the staff vehicle felt suffocating as we merged onto the highway toward the naval base. Protocol dictated that junior personnel maintain complete silence unless addressed by a superior officer, but the tension radiating from the rear seat was overwhelming. In the rearview mirror, I watched Admiral Hayes stare out the window, his jaw clenched, and his hands tightly clasped over his briefcase. Finally, his voice cut through the hum of the engine, low and rough. "Where is she, Wren?" Hearing a 4-star admiral use my first name instead of my rank felt jarring. "She lives in Oregon, sir, in a small coastal town, very quietly." "Is she healthy? Is she safe?" His questions came fast, stripping away decades of military detachment. "Yes, sir, she's well," I replied, my hands gripping the steering wheel. All my life, Mom had guarded her past like classified intelligence. Whenever I asked about her time in service, she would redirect the conversation, her thumb absent-mindedly tracing that compass tattoo on her wrist. She never spoke of who had the matching ink or why she kept a vintage navigation compass locked in her cedar chest. Before I could process the sudden shift in reality, the Admiral leaned forward, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. "Change of plans, sailor. Bypass the main command suite at headquarters. Take the back gate to the secondary briefing wing and park in the secure bay. We need an off-the-record conversation before I step in front of the brass." My pulse raced. Whatever history connected my quiet mother to this powerful admiral was about to be laid bare. We entered the secondary briefing wing through a private corridor, avoiding the bustling administrative staff. Admiral Hayes stepped into a dimly lit conference room, firmly shutting the heavy door behind us and turning the deadbolt. He dismissed his traveling aide with a curt nod through the frosted glass, demanding complete operational secrecy. "Sit down, Wren," he ordered quietly, gesturing to the polished table. I took a seat, the formal distance between our ranks beginning to blur. "Sir, if this is about my mother—" "Everything is about your mother," Hayes interrupted, his voice thick with uncharacteristic vulnerability. I swallowed hard, finally giving voice to the questions that had haunted my childhood. Whenever I was young and she was troubled, she would sit on our back porch for hours, staring up at the Big Dipper. She always told me that no matter how lost a sailor becomes in the dark, the pointer stars will always guide them home. She touched her wrist every single time she said it. A profound sorrow washed over the Admiral's face. Slowly, he unzipped his leather briefcase and pulled out a battered, salt-stained service journal from the late 90s. He flipped to a worn page and slid it across the table toward me. My breath caught in my throat. Across the yellowed paper were hand-drawn navigational charts, detailed mission logs, and technical sketches, all rendered in the precise, unmistakably neat handwriting of my mother. "Your mother didn't just serve in a standard unit, Wren," Hayes whispered, leaning in close. "Evelyn was the lead tactical specialist on a classified joint task force. We served side by side, answering directly to the Pentagon on missions that officially never existed." Hayes stared down at the open journal, his fingers lightly grazing the aged ink. In the autumn of 1998, our task force was deployed on an off-the-books extraction in the Persian Gulf. A deep reconnaissance unit had been compromised behind hostile waters, and Evelyn and I were sent in on a clandestine support vessel to bring them out. When our navigational radar took direct enemy fire during a midnight squall, we lost all digital telemetry. We were blind, surrounded, and cut off from the fleet. He rolled up his left sleeve, exposing the dark compass. That night, your mother navigated our entire crew through treacherous mined shallows, using nothing but a magnetic hand compass and the celestial fix of the Big Dipper. She saved 7 lives, including mine. Before that mission, when we knew the odds of returning were almost 0, we got these matching tattoos in a quiet port in Bahrain. It was our solemn pact. No matter how dark the waters got or how far apart we ended up, we would always find true north and navigate our way back to safety. Hayes's expression hardened, shadowed by old grief. The extraction succeeded, but within 48 hours, an unprecedented intelligence leak compromised our entire unit's identities. Foreign operatives began tracking our personnel stateside. Evelyn knew that remaining visible in the Navy would paint a target on her newborn child. On you, Wren. To shield you, Command orchestrated a total blackout scenario. But during the chaotic dispersal and secondary extraction, an asset transport went down off the coast. Official naval intelligence confirmed 0 survivors, listing your mother as lost at sea. For 22 years, I lived with the crushing weight that the finest navigator I ever served with, the woman who saved my life, had perished in the cold aftermath of our operation. I rose through the flag ranks, carrying that grief every single day. The room seemed to shrink as the reality of Hayes's words settled into my chest. Lost at sea, I repeated, the concept feeling surreal. Sir, my mother raised me alone in complete isolation. We moved 4 times before I finished middle school. She never allowed our names to appear in local newspapers, paid every bill in cash, and insisted that all our official identification paperwork be kept under lock and key. Now I finally understand why. Admiral Hayes leaned his elbows on the conference table, burying his face in his weathered hands. Senior Command buried her true survival file under classified clearance to safeguard the operational intelligence she carried. When the threat matrix subsided a decade later, the bureaucracy simply kept the door shut to avoid admitting they had faked a casualty report. They let her live as a ghost in her own country. His voice broke with heavy, unvarnished regret. Every promotion I received, every medal pinned to this uniform, felt like a hollow betrayal. I climbed to the top of the naval hierarchy, believing I had left my best officer behind to drown in dark water. The guilt followed me into every command meeting, every deployment, every quiet room. I reached into my dress uniform pocket and drew out the heavy silver chain I had worn beneath my collar since graduating from boot camp. Hanging from the link was my mother's vintage naval compass pendant, engraved with a set of coordinates and an anchor crest. Slowly, I placed the pendant directly onto the table. It aligned with microscopic precision against the custom brass seal embedded on the Admiral's personal briefcase, their serial numbers matching down to the final digit. Hayes stared at the silver metal, his breath catching in his throat as 22 years of grief and deception dissolved into undeniable proof. "She kept it," he whispered, running a trembling finger over the compass. She carried the seal with her through all those silent years. Without hesitation, Admiral Hayes reached for the secure red line telephone mounted on the wall. He entered his priority authorization codes, bypassed the civilian operator network, and dialed the private Oregon number I gave him. He placed the heavy handset on speaker, setting it between us on the mahogany table. After 4 long rings, a soft, familiar voice broke the silence. "Hello?" Hayes closed his eyes, his entire body shuddering with emotion. "Navigator," he whispered, his voice cracking. "This is the commander. Do you have a fix on true north?" A sharp intake of breath echoed through the line. The long pause that followed carried 22 years of unsaid words. "Thomas?" my mother asked, her tone trembling with disbelief. "Is that really you?" "It's me, Evelyn. Your daughter is sitting right across from me. She saw the compass." Tears spilled freely down Hayes's face as Mom spoke. "When Wren enlisted, I prayed every day that she would be safe, but I never dared to reach out to you, Thomas. The threat to her was too real, and once the dust settled, you were already rising through the Pentagon. I couldn't risk dragging you down with a ghost from a erased mission. My silence was the only armor I had left to protect my daughter's career and safety." "You gave up your entire life to keep her safe while we covered up the truth," Hayes said firmly, straightening his back as the full authority of his rank returned. "That ends today, Evelyn. By order of this office, your records are being pulled from the classified archives. I am personally rectifying the Naval Register and restoring your full military honors before the week is through." 1 month later, in a private closed-door ceremony at the naval station, my mother stood in a crisp service uniform for the first time in over 2 decades. With tears in his eyes, Admiral Hayes pinned the Distinguished Service Cross to her lapel, formally restoring her full veteran status, pension, and classified unit honors in the presence of select naval brass. Standing at attention between my mother and the Admiral, I finally understood the true weight of the oath we take. Service is not just the missions recorded in official history. It is the silent, enduring sacrifice made in the shadows for the people we love.